When I received that text message from my daughter-in-law stating, "We think it's better if you don't attend the graduation ceremony," my hands trembled so badly I dropped my phone. 18 years of rearranging my life whenever they needed childcare. 18 years of canceled plans and postponed dreams. 18 years of loving my grandson with my whole heart. And this was how they repaid me. But what happened next changed everything. Not just for them, but more importantly, for me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Margaret Wilson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I never planned on being a grandmother at 48, but when my son Tyler announced that his girlfriend Vanessa was pregnant during their sophomore year of college, I embraced it wholeheartedly. Tyler and Vanessa were just kids themselves, overwhelmed and unprepared. So when they decided to keep the baby and finish their education, I offered my support without hesitation. "Mom, we can't do this without you," Tyler had said, his voice cracking over the phone. "Vanessa's parents want nothing to do with us now." How could I say no? I'd raised Tyler alone after his father walked out when he was just 3 years old. I knew what it was like to struggle, to make sacrifices, to put someone else's needs before your own. I'd worked as an elementary school teacher by day and waited tables at night to give Tyler everything he needed. I wasn't about to let my grandchild face the same hardships. So when little Ethan was born, I became much more than just a grandmother. I was essentially a third parent. While Tyler and Vanessa attended classes, I cared for their infant son. I'd rush over to their small apartment across town before dawn, often after grading papers until midnight, just so they could make their 8 a.m. lectures. I'd rock Ethan back to sleep, prepare bottles, do their laundry, and clean their apartment, all before heading to my own job teaching fourth graders. "You're a lifesaver, Maggie," Vanessa would say, rushing out the door with barely a backward glance at her son. "We'll be back by 4. They rarely were. 4 o'clock would come and go, and I'd receive a text. "Study group running late. Can you stay until 7? Or Tyler would call, "Mom, Vanessa and I got invited to a networking event. It's really important for our careers. Could you possibly keep Ethan overnight?" I never said no, not once. I'd cancel my book club, reschedule doctor's appointments, turn down dinner invitations from friends and potential suitors alike. My colleague Patricia once asked me, "Maggie, when was the last time you did something just for you?" I couldn't remember. As Tyler and Vanessa completed their degrees and started their careers, I thought my role might diminish. Instead, it expanded. They bought a house in Meadowbrook, an upscale suburb 30 minutes from my modest condo. The commute was exhausting, but I made it faithfully whenever they called. Vanessa landed a position at a prestigious marketing firm, and Tyler joined a software company. Their careers flourished, partly because they never had to worry about childcare. "We got tickets to a conference in San Diego," they'd announce on a Friday afternoon. "We'll be gone until Wednesday. You can stay in the guest room. Ethan has soccer on Saturday at 9, piano lessons at 2, and a birthday party on Sunday," Vanessa would instruct, handing me a color-coded schedule. "Oh, and could you possibly deep clean the refrigerator while we're gone? It's gotten a bit gross." I'd nod and smile, rearranging my life once again. I loved Ethan fiercely. His curious mind, his gentle heart, his infectious laugh. Those precious moments when he'd curl up beside me for bedtime stories or grab my hand during walks made everything worthwhile. We had inside jokes and special traditions. While Vanessa insisted on organic, sugar-free snacks, I'd occasionally sneak him chocolate, chip cookies made from his great-grandmother's recipe. "This is our secret, Grammy," 5-year-old Ethan would whisper, chocolate smeared across his grinning face. As years passed, I noticed Vanessa's attitude toward me slowly shifting. When Ethan was a baby, she'd been grateful, even affectionate. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Maggie. You're such a blessing." But as their financial situation improved and her career advanced, her gratitude waned. She began criticizing my methods. My cooking was too traditional, my discipline too lenient, my influence too significant. "We're trying not to give Ethan too much screen time," she'd say sharply, catching us watching an educational documentary. "And he shouldn't be having any more sugar today. Grammy lets me have ice cream sometimes," 8-year-old Ethan piped up innocently. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Well, Grammy won't be doing that anymore." I noticed how she'd reorganize things. I'd cleaned, redo laundry I'd folded, remark that the dishes weren't quite spotless. Small, cutting comments that gradually eroded my confidence. "Ethan's shirts should be folded this way, Maggie. This isn't how I like the dishwasher loaded. Did you use regular detergent? You know we only use the organic kind." Tyler witnessed these interactions but rarely intervened. When I mentioned it privately, he sighed. "Mom, you know how Vanessa is. She likes things a certain way. Just try to go along with it, okay? For Ethan's sake." For Ethan's sake. That phrase became my mantra. I swallowed my hurt, adjusted to Vanessa's ever-changing preferences, and continued showing up whenever they called. Because it was never really about Tyler or Vanessa. It was about that amazing child who called me Grammy and looked at me like I hung the moon. When Ethan entered middle school, I thought perhaps they'd need me less. Instead, the calls increased. "Maggie, Ethan has a science project due tomorrow. Can you help him finish it? We have a dinner with clients." "Maggie, Ethan needs a costume for the school play by Friday. You're good at sewing, right?" "Maggie, we forgot it's our turn to bring snacks for the soccer team tomorrow. 25 kids. Nothing with nuts or gluten. I'd rush to solve these. Emergencies. Often staying up late to complete projects or bake appropriate snacks. I'd drive Ethan to practices, rehearsals, and study groups when his parents were too busy. I attended parent-teacher conferences when they couldn't make it, sitting awkwardly as teachers assumed I was his mother. "You have a remarkable son, Mrs. Wilson," they'd say. "I'm his grandmother," I'd correct gently, feeling both proud and somehow displaced. By the time Ethan reached high school, I'd been effectively functioning as a third parent for 15 years. I'd modified my teaching schedule to part-time, sacrificing career advancement and retirement savings to be available for my grandson. My own dreams, traveling, dating, pursuing my interest in photography, had been indefinitely postponed. Yet despite my constant presence, I noticed a disturbing pattern. When there were school events or achievements to celebrate, my role would suddenly diminish. I wasn't included in the professional family photos Vanessa arranged annually. For Ethan's 16th birthday, they planned an elaborate party at an expensive restaurant. "It's just going to be immediate family," Vanessa explained when I asked about the details. "But I am immediate family," I'd responded, hurt evident in my voice. "You know what I mean, Maggie. Just the four of us. Me, Tyler, Ethan, and my mother." Her mother, who had refused to acknowledge Ethan's existence for his first 5 years, was now considered immediate family. But I, who had helped raise him from infancy, was not. Tyler called later to smooth things over. "Mom, it's just dinner. We'll do something with you another time." That another time never materialized. When Ethan's junior year arrived, college preparations began in earnest. I spent countless hours helping him research universities, refine essays, and prepare for standardized tests. Vanessa and Tyler were consumed with their careers, often traveling for weeks at a time, leaving Ethan in my care. "Grammy, I couldn't do this without you," Ethan told me one night as we finalized his personal statement for college applications. "Mom and Dad are so busy, they barely know what's happening." I squeezed his hand. "I'll always be here for you, sweetheart." The acceptance letters started arriving in spring. Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale. Ethan had his pick of prestigious universities. Tyler and Vanessa were ecstatic, quickly taking to social media to share the news. Our brilliant son has been accepted to Harvard. Our son proud parents, Todd's Ivy League, Vanessa posted, alongside a photo of the three of them holding the acceptance letter. I learned about his acceptances through these posts, not from Ethan or his parents directly. When I called to congratulate him, Vanessa answered. "Oh, we've been meaning to call you," she said dismissively. "It's been so hectic with all these acceptances coming in. We're having a small celebration dinner tonight." "That's wonderful," I said, waiting for the invitation that never came. Ethan eventually chose Princeton, his late-night conversations with me revealing that he preferred its humanities programs to Harvard's more pre-professional focus. I was the one who had nurtured his love of literature and history, spending hours discussing books and documentaries with him while his parents focused on more practical subjects. The morning after Ethan made his decision, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I stopped by their house with his favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes made from scratch. Vanessa opened the door in her workout clothes, looking annoyed by my unannounced visit. "Maggie, we're actually heading out. Ethan has a fitting for his graduation suit, and then we're meeting with the Princeton Alumni Association." "I just wanted to congratulate him," I said, holding up the pancakes. I know Princeton was his top choice. She took the container with a tight smile. "Yes, we're very proud. Harvard would have been better for networking, but Princeton has a certain prestige." "Is Ethan here? Can I see him quickly?" "He's still getting ready. I'll tell him you stopped by." As she began closing the door, I heard Ethan call from inside. "Is that Grammy?" "Yes, but we're running late," Vanessa called back. To me, she added, "We'll have him call you later." That call never came. Instead, I received a text that evening. "Thanks for the pancakes, Grammy. They were awesome as always. Sorry we missed you this morning. Things are crazy right now with graduation coming up. Love you." It wasn't until the following week that I saw him in person when he came to my condo alone one afternoon. "I've missed you, Grammy," he said, hugging me tightly. At 18, he towered over me, but his embrace still felt like that of the little boy who once fell asleep in my arms. We spent hours talking about his college plans, his excitement about Princeton, his nervous anticipation about leaving home. As he was preparing to leave, he hesitated at the door. "Grammy, there's something I need to tell you," he began, looking uncomfortable. "About graduation." My heart sank. I'd been waiting for details about the ceremony, hoping to request time off from school well in advance. "Mom says we only have 6 tickets for the ceremony," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "And with both sets of grandparents, plus Mom's sister and her husband." "Both sets of grandparents?" I interrupted, confused. "Your grandfather hasn't been in contact since your father was a child." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Dad's been in touch with him recently. Apparently, he wants to reconnect. Mom says it's important for me to have a relationship with all my family." All his family, except the grandmother who had helped raise him. "I see," I said quietly, struggling to maintain my composure. "And there's no way to get additional tickets?" "Mom says they're very strict about it." He looked miserable. "I tried to tell her that you should be there, but she said since you're not technically related to her side." "Not technically? Related," I repeated, the words burning like acid. "I see." "I'm really sorry, Grammy. I'll make sure you get lots of pictures." I hugged him and assured him it was fine, that I understood completely. But after he left, I sat at my kitchen table and wept. 18 years of devotion, of rearranging my life to accommodate their needs, of loving that boy like he was my own son, and this was my reward. to be pushed aside when it was convenient, to be considered less important than a grandfather who had never once shown interest in Tyler, let alone Ethan. That evening, I received a text from Vanessa. "We think it's better if you don't attend." The graduation ceremony. The tickets are very limited, and we need to prioritize. You understand, right? You can always come to the open house afterward. My hands trembled as I read her message. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissiveness, as if I were some distant acquaintance rather than the woman who had helped raise their child for 18 years. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I pulled out a calendar and began counting. Days spent caring for Ethan when he was sick. Weekends sacrificed to attend his sports games when his parents were too busy. Nights spent helping with homework, science projects, college, applications, hours driven, meals cooked, laundry folded, tears wiped, milestones celebrated. Thousands upon thousands of hours of my life given freely out of love, only to be told I wasn't important enough to witness one of the most significant moments of Ethan's life. Something inside me shifted that night. A lifetime of accommodating others, of putting my needs last, of accepting whatever scraps of consideration came my way. It all rose up like a wave and crashed against the shores of my patience. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I felt the stirring of genuine anger. The next morning, I called my sister Claire in Denver. We hadn't been as close since I'd become so involved with Ethan, another relationship sacrificed on the altar of my availability to Tyler and Vanessa. "Maggie?" she answered, surprised. "Is everything okay? You never call on weekdays." I told her everything. The years of being taken for granted, the gradual erosion of respect, and finally the exclusion from Ethan's graduation. Those ungrateful, entitled. Claire didn't finish the sentence. After a deep breath, she said, "You know what you need? You need to get away. Come stay with me for a couple of weeks. My guest room is all yours." "I can't just leave," I protested weakly. "Ethan's graduation is in 3 weeks, and even if I'm not invited to the ceremony, I should be here for the open house." "Why?" Claire challenged. "So Vanessa can have you running around serving drinks and cleaning up while she plays the gracious hostess? So you can watch from the sidelines as Tyler's deadbeat dad gets treated like royalty?" Put that way, it did sound pathetic. "Take some time for yourself, Maggie," Claire continued, her voice softening. "When was the last time you did that? When was the last time you put yourself first?" I couldn't remember. That afternoon, I requested personal leave from school, booked a flight to Denver, and began packing. I felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated, like I was breaking free from a cage I hadn't even realized was holding me. I texted Tyler, "I'm going to visit Claire for a few weeks. I'll be leaving tomorrow." His response was immediate and predictable. "Mom, what are you talking about? You can't leave now. We need you here for graduation preparations." I wrote back simply, "I'm sure you and Vanessa will manage beautifully without me, just as you've managed to exclude me from the ceremony itself." Then I turned off my phone. The 3 weeks in Denver transformed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Claire lived in a bright, airy condo in the Arts District, surrounded by galleries, cafes, and the vibrant energy of creative people. Her life, I quickly discovered, was full and rich in a way mine had ceased to be. "I've been worried about you for years," she confessed our first evening as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony. "Every time we talk, it's all about Ethan and Tyler, and what they need from you. Never about what you want or need." I started to defend myself out of habit, but the words died on my lips. She was right. Claire, a professional photographer with her own studio, kept busy with clients and projects, but her time remained her own. She had a wide circle of friends, mostly women our age who had prioritized their passions alongside their families or chosen not to have children at all. They welcomed me warmly into their gatherings, book discussions at cozy wine bars, photography exhibits, weekend hikes in the mountains. Maggie was a talented photographer in college, Claire told her friend Diane, a gallery owner who specialized in nature photography. She has an eye for composition that I've always envied. You were a photographer? Diane asked, genuinely interested. I felt myself blushing. Just a hobby, really. I haven't picked up a camera in years. She's being modest, Claire interjected. She won the university's annual showcase her senior year. Her series on urban childhood was extraordinary. The next day, Claire presented me with a sleek digital camera. It's my backup, she explained when I protested. I want you to use it while you're here. At first, I felt self-conscious, awkward with the unfamiliar equipment. But muscle memory returned quickly, and soon I was experimenting with angles and lighting, capturing the dramatic landscapes of Colorado and the vibrant street scenes of Denver. You still have the eye, Claire observed, reviewing my shots one evening. Maybe even better than before. There's a depth to these images, a sense of longing and rediscovery. The photography awakened something in me that had been dormant for too long. Each time I framed a shot, choosing what to include and what to leave out, I reclaimed a small piece of myself. This was Maggie Wilson making choices about what mattered, what deserved attention and care. Not Grammy serving others' needs, just Maggie, seeing the world through her own lens. Meanwhile, my phone accumulated messages that I read but didn't answer. From Tyler. Increasingly frantic demands for my return, gradually shifting from anger. Mom, this is completely irresponsible. How could you leave without any notice? To guilt. Ethan keeps asking about you. Don't you care that you're hurting him? To desperate need. The caterer messed up the order for the open house. Nobody knows how to fix this but you. From Vanessa. Terse inquiries about household tasks I normally handled. Where did you put Ethan's baby photos? I need them for the graduation display. And thinly veiled accusations. Your sudden vacation has made things extremely difficult for everyone. I hope you're satisfied. From Ethan. Confused, hurt messages that nearly broke my resolve. Grammy, where are you? Dad says you're mad at us. Are you okay? That last one kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of Claire's guest room. I loved that boy with every atom of my being. The thought of causing him pain, of not being there when he needed me, it cut deeper than any wound Vanessa had inflicted. But Claire's gentle questioning helped me see the situation more clearly. What are you teaching Ethan by allowing yourself to be treated this way? She asked one morning as we hiked through a wildflower-filled meadow. What example are you setting about healthy relationships, about respecting yourself? She was right. By accepting Vanessa's disrespect, by allowing myself to be used when convenient and discarded when not, I was modeling behavior I would never want Ethan to accept in his own relationships. So instead of rushing back, I sent him a heartfelt message. I love you more than words can express, Ethan. I'm so proud of the young man you've become, and I'll always be here for you. Right now, I need some time for myself, something I should have done years ago. Congratulations on your graduation. No one deserves it more than you. His response came hours later. I understand, Grammy. I miss you, but I get it. Dad and Mom won't tell me what happened, but I know it must have been bad for you to leave like this. Take all the time you need. I love you. His maturity and empathy brought tears to my eyes. That was the boy I'd helped raise, thoughtful, kind, able to see beyond his own needs. Maybe my years of sacrifice hadn't been entirely in vain after all. As graduation day approached, Claire surprised me with news that she'd booked us both flights back for the ceremony. But I wasn't invited, I protested, my stomach clenching at the thought of confronting Vanessa and Tyler. Claire's eyes sparkled with mischief. I have a plan. The evening before our flight, We sat in her living room reviewing the digital portfolio I'd created during my stay. Landscapes, street scenes, portraits of Claire's friends who had graciously modeled for me. Looking at these images, evidence of my rediscovered passion, I felt a quiet pride that had nothing to do with being someone's mother or grandmother. "You should submit these to a gallery," Claire suggested. Diane was very impressed with what she's seen so far. I laughed off the suggestion, but a small seed of possibility had been planted. What if I did pursue photography more seriously? What if I allocated even a fraction of the energy I'd poured into Tyler's family toward my own dreams? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Our flight the next morning landed just after noon, leaving us plenty of time before the evening graduation ceremony. Claire dropped me at my condo, where a stack of mail and a blinking answering machine awaited. I ignored both, focusing instead on selecting an outfit for the evening. A new dress I'd purchased in Denver, deep blue with a subtle pattern that brought out my eyes. I felt different as I prepared for the ceremony, lighter somehow, more centered in myself. The 3 weeks away had given me perspective I'd been lacking for years. I was more than just Grammy, the reliable support system. I was Maggie Wilson, teacher, photographer, woman with dreams and desires of my own. Claire picked me up at 5, looking elegant in a burgundy pantsuit. "Ready for Operation Graduation Crasher?" she asked with a grin. I nodded, surprising myself with my own resolve. Absolutely. The high school auditorium was already filling with excited families when we arrived. I spotted Vanessa immediately, holding court near the front, resplendent in an expensive-looking cream suit. Tyler stood beside her, along with an older couple I recognized as her parents and a distinguished-looking man who had to be Tyler's father. The same strong jaw, the same set of the shoulders. They were all smiling for photos, a perfect family tableau. My courage nearly failed at the sight. But then I caught a glimpse of Ethan in his cap and gown, scanning the crowd anxiously. When his eyes met mine, his face lit up with pure joy. "Grammy!" he called, breaking away from the photographer to rush toward me. "You came." He enveloped me in a tight hug, and in that moment, all my doubts vanished. This was where I belonged, not because I was useful to Tyler and Vanessa, but because the bond between Ethan and me was real and valuable in its own right. "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I told him, blinking back tears. Over Ethan's shoulder, I saw Vanessa advancing toward us, her face a carefully controlled mask of displeasure. Tyler trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable. "Maggie," Vanessa said coolly. "What a surprise. We thought you were still in Denver." "I flew back for my grandson's graduation," I replied, matching her tone, but keeping my arm firmly around Ethan's shoulders. "We discussed the ticket situation," she said, lowering her voice. It was made very clear. "I have a ticket for Grammy," Ethan interrupted, his voice steady and mature. "I always did. I saved one specifically for her." Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. "Ethan, we agreed—" "No, Mom. You decided," he corrected firmly. "But it's my graduation, and Grammy has been there for me my entire life. She deserves to be here more than anyone." The steel in his voice, so unlike the accommodating boy who usually sought to please everyone, surprised us all. In that moment, I saw the man he was becoming, someone who recognized genuine love and support and valued it appropriately. Vanessa glanced around, clearly aware of curious onlookers. "We'll discuss this later," she said tightly. "The ceremony is about to begin." As she stalked back to her family group, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Front row, right side," he whispered. "I saved you the best seat." The ceremony itself was a blur of emotions. Watching Ethan cross the stage to receive his diploma, the golden tassel swinging from his cap, I felt a profound mixture of pride, love, and bittersweet recognition of the passing years. This brilliant young man, soon to depart for Princeton, had once been the tiny baby I rocked to sleep while his parents studied for exams. I was vaguely aware of Vanessa's rigid posture in the row behind me, of Tyler's awkward attempts to mediate, the tension, of the curious glances from Eleanor and Tyler's father. But none of that mattered. This moment wasn't about them or their carefully orchestrated family image. It was about Ethan and his achievement, and yes, about my role in helping him reach this milestone. After the ceremony, as families gathered outside for photos, I expected to be sidelined as usual. Instead, Ethan approached with the professional photographer Vanessa had hired. "I want a picture with just me and Grammy first," he announced, putting his arm around my shoulders. The look on Vanessa's face was priceless, a mixture of fury and calcified social grace. She couldn't object without making a scene, something her carefully cultivated image wouldn't permit. So she stood silently as the photographer positioned us against a flowering tree, Ethan's arm protectively around me, both of us beaming with genuine joy. I knew this photo would become one of my most treasured possessions, not because it displayed a perfect family narrative like Vanessa's social media posts, but because it captured a real connection between two people who truly loved each other. The open house that followed was held at a rented event space downtown, lavishly decorated with Princeton colors and expensive floral arrangements. Typically, I would have arrived early to help set up, stayed late to clean, and spent the intervening hours making sure everyone else enjoyed themselves. Today, I entered as a guest, accepting a glass of champagne from a hired server and circulating among Ethan's teachers and friends. Several of his teachers sought me out specifically, their comments revealing how much Ethan had spoken about me over the years. "Mrs. Wilson, I've heard so much about you from Ethan," his English teacher said warmly. "He credits you with his love of literature. Those poetry anthologies you gave him really sparked something special. You're the one who helped with that. Incredible Civil War research project, aren't you?" Another asked. "Ethan mentioned your weekend trips to historical sites. That project won our school's history prize." Each recognition, each acknowledgement of my role in Ethan's education and development felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been dismissed or minimized. I hadn't realized how much I needed that validation until I received it, not from Tyler or Vanessa, but from the people who had witnessed Ethan's growth and achievements. Across the room, I noticed Tyler deep in conversation with his father, their body language stiff and awkward. Vanessa flitted between groups, her practiced hostess smile never reaching her eyes. Eleanor sat with Vanessa's father and his new wife, all three of them looking uncomfortable in each other's company. For the first time, I saw through the facade of their perfect family narrative. Despite Vanessa's careful curation, there was more genuine warmth and connection in the quiet moments Ethan and I had shared over homework at my kitchen table than in this entire elaborately staged celebration. As the evening progressed, Ethan found me on the venue's outdoor patio, away from the crowd. "I'm so glad you came, Grammy," he said softly. "It wouldn't have been right without you." "I wouldn't have missed it for anything," I assured him. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." He fidgeted with his tie, suddenly seeming younger than his 18 years. "I know something happened between you and Mom," he said hesitantly. "Dad won't talk about it, and Mom just says you've been difficult lately." I sighed, considering my words carefully. How much should I burden him with? How honest could I be without putting him in an impossible position between his parents and me? "Your mother and I have different perspectives on family," I said finally, "and different ideas about my place in yours." Ethan's eyes, so like his father's but warmer, more empathetic, studied my face. "She tried to keep you away from my graduation," he said. "Not a question, but a statement of fact. That's why you left, isn't it?" "That was part of it," I acknowledged. "But it was also about something bigger. About recognizing that I've spent so many years focused on you and your parents that I'd forgotten about my own needs and dreams." He nodded slowly. "Like your photography. Mom always said it was just a hobby, but I remember those amazing pictures you took at my Little League games. You have a real talent. His recognition of this part of me, a part that had nothing to do with being his grandmother, touched me deeply. The time in Denver with Claire helped me remember that, I said. And it made me realize that I can love you completely while still having a life of my own. I want that for you, Grammy, he said earnestly. You deserve to be happy. In that moment, I felt the first real healing begin. Whatever happened with Tyler and Vanessa, my relationship with Ethan remained strong, perhaps even stronger for having weathered this storm. He saw me, not just as a convenient caregiver or a reliable source of support, but as a whole person worthy of respect and consideration. As we rejoined the party, Tyler approached, looking uncertain. Mom, can we talk tomorrow? There are some things I need to say. I nodded, neither warm nor cold. I'll be home all day. The next morning, I woke early and prepared for Tyler's visit, not by cooking his favorite breakfast or tidying my already neat condo, but by setting up my camera and tripod on the balcony. The early morning light was perfect for capturing the flowering trees in the park across the street, their delicate blossoms caught in a gentle breeze. I was so absorbed in adjusting the settings that I barely registered the doorbell. When I answered, Tyler stood awkwardly in the hallway, looking more disheveled than I'd seen him in years. You're taking pictures again, he observed, noticing the camera in my hand. Yes, I said simply, stepping aside to let him enter. Claire gave me her backup camera to use. He wandered into my living room, seeming to notice for the first time how few personal items were displayed, mostly photos of Ethan, a few of him from childhood, nothing of my own life or interests. The realization made me sad. How had I allowed myself to become so thoroughly erased? Mom, I owe you an apology, Tyler began, sinking onto my sofa. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize now how much I've taken you for granted. We all have. I nodded, waiting. Vanessa was wrong to try to exclude you from the graduation, he continued. And I was wrong to go along with it. The truth is, we've relied on you so much that when you started doing things for yourself, it scared us. I've never turned down a request to help with Ethan, I said. Not once in 18 years. But the moment I took time for myself, suddenly I wasn't committed enough to this family. That hurt, Tyler. He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I know, and I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I love Ethan with all my heart, I continued, and I love you. But I'm not just a free babysitter or a cook or a housekeeper. I have my own life, my own interests, and it's time I started living for myself a little bit more. I understand, Tyler said quietly, and I'll talk to Vanessa. No, I said firmly. I don't need you to talk to Vanessa. I need you to see me as your mother, not just as someone who's useful to have around when you need something. He flinched at my directness, but nodded slowly. I promise to do better, Mom. We talked for another hour, more honestly than we had in years. I told him about my rediscovered passion for photography, about Claire's suggestion that I submit my work to galleries. He seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about technique and subject matter in a way that reminded me of the curious boy he'd been before ambition, and Vanessa's influence had narrowed his focus. As he was leaving, he hesitated at the door. Ethan asked if you could help him shop for dorm supplies this weekend. Vanessa and I are swamped with work, and he specifically requested you. The old me would have immediately rearranged my schedule, canceling plans with friends or putting aside personal projects to accommodate this request. Instead, I considered my calendar thoughtfully. I'm having brunch with my book club on Saturday morning, I said, but I could meet him at the home goods store around 1. Tyler looked surprised but nodded. I'll let him know. After he left, I returned to my photography, capturing the changing light as morning progressed to afternoon. I felt lighter. Somehow, as if setting this small boundary, prioritizing my existing commitment instead of automatically sacrificing it, had shifted something fundamental in our relationship. That weekend, as Ethan and I navigated the crowded aisles of the home goods store, selecting bedding, towels, and storage containers for his dorm room, I realized that our relationship had evolved into something new and valuable. No longer was I simply the reliable support person, always available at his parents' convenience. Now I was someone with my own life and interests, who chose to allocate time to him because I valued our connection. "You seem different, Grammy," Ethan observed, as we loaded his purchases into my car. "Happier, somehow." I smiled, thinking of the photo exhibit Claire was helping me prepare for a small gallery in my neighborhood. "I am happier. I'm finding my way back to myself." "I like this version of you," he said sincerely. "Not that. I didn't like you before, but now you seem more complete." His insight, so mature for his 18 years, warmed my heart. This was what I had worked for all along. Not just to raise a successful student or a polite young man, but a thoughtful, human being capable of seeing others in their full humanity. In the weeks that followed, as Ethan prepared for his departure to Princeton, I maintained this new balance in my life. I still helped him shop for supplies, advised him on which books to take, and listened to his anxieties about leaving home. But I also attended my book club regularly, spent evenings working on my photography portfolio, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected for years. Vanessa remained cool and distant, clearly uncomfortable with this new dynamic where she couldn't simply summon me at will. Tyler made efforts to rebuild our relationship, though years of patterns weren't easily changed. But Ethan, wonderful, perceptive Ethan, seemed to flourish in the context of our more balanced connection. The day before he left for Princeton, Ethan stopped by my condo unexpectedly. He carried a small, wrapped package. "I wanted to give you this before I go," he said, handing it to me. "It's not much, but it made me think of you." Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with a camera design. "For your photography notes," he explained, "and maybe for writing about your travels. Claire mentioned you're thinking of going to Santa Fe for a workshop in October." The thoughtfulness of the gift, acknowledging my rediscovered passion, encouraging my plans, moved me deeply. This wasn't a generic best grandma mug or scented candle. This was a recognition of who I was beyond my role in his life. "I love it," I said, blinking back tears. "Thank you, sweetheart." We spent the evening looking through old photo albums, laughing at pictures from his childhood, the gap-toothed kindergartner proudly holding a science fair ribbon, the serious middle schooler in his first debate tournament, the lanky teenager beaming beside his first car. So many memories captured in these images, so many moments we'd shared. "I'm going to miss you so much," I admitted as the evening drew to a close. "I'll miss you too," he said, "but I'll call every week, and you can visit anytime." Princeton has this great photography program for continuing education students. Maybe you could take a course while you're there. His assumption that I would visit on my own terms, not just when summoned by his parents for practical assistance, warmed me. This was a healthier relationship for both of us, one where I was valued for who I was, not just what I could provide. The next morning, I declined Tyler's perfunctory invitation to join them for the drive to Princeton. This was a journey they needed to make as a nuclear family, and I had finally learned to respect the boundaries of my role in their lives. Instead, I hugged Ethan tightly on their doorstep, slipping him a small package of homemade cookies for the trip. "Call me when you get settled," I said. "I want to hear all about your roommate and your classes." "I will," he promised. "And don't forget to send me some of your new photographs. I want to see what you're working on." As I watched their car pull away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in the wonderful young man Ethan had become, sadness at his departure, but also a newfound sense of possibility for my own future. For so long, my life had revolved around his needs and schedule. Now we both had the opportunity to grow in new directions. Back at my condo, I opened the leather journal Ethan had given me and wrote on the first page, "Today begins a new chapter." Then I picked up my camera and headed out to capture the changing light of late summer, ready to focus the lens on whatever caught my eye. Not as someone's mother or grandmother, but simply as Maggie Wilson, photographer, finally reclaiming her own story. The return to my hometown after 3 weeks in Denver felt like stepping into a different world. My condo, which had once seemed merely functional, a place to sleep and prepare for another day of serving Tyler and Vanessa's needs, now felt spacious and full of possibility. I wandered through the rooms, seeing them with fresh eyes. The living room could use more color. The spare bedroom would make a perfect home office or perhaps a small studio space. The kitchen deserved better than the hastily prepared meals I'd grown accustomed to making just for myself. I'd barely had time to unpack when my phone began vibrating with messages. 23 texts and 11 voicemails had accumulated during my flight home, most from Tyler and Vanessa, each more urgent than the last. Apparently, no one had told Ethan where I'd gone, just that I was unavailable for his graduation. He'd been asking for me repeatedly, growing increasingly distressed as the ceremony approached. The final voicemail, left just an hour ago, was from Ethan himself. "Grammy?" His voice wavered slightly. "I don't know where you are or why no one will tell me anything. I'm worried about you. Please call me back. My graduation is tomorrow and I really need you there. I saved you a ticket. Front row." My heart constricted painfully. They hadn't even told him I wasn't invited. Instead, they'd let him believe I was missing, perhaps ill or unreachable. Had they been planning to blame me for my absence? To paint me as the inconsiderate grandmother who disappeared during this important milestone? I called him back immediately, stepping onto my balcony for privacy. He answered on the first ring. "Grammy, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," I assured him, keeping my voice steady despite the anger churning inside me. "I've been visiting Aunt Claire in Denver. I just got back." "Why didn't you tell me you were going? And why doesn't anyone know when you're coming to the graduation tomorrow? Mom keeps saying she's not sure if you'll make it." I closed my eyes, gathering my courage. The old Maggie would have smoothed things over, would have found some explanation that protected Tyler and Vanessa while accepting the blame herself. But Denver had changed me. Claire and her friends had helped me recognize how damaging that pattern had been, not just to me, but to Ethan too. "Ethan," I said carefully, "your mother told me there weren't enough tickets for me to attend the ceremony, that only immediate family would be there." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "What?" he finally said, confusion and disbelief evident in his voice. "That's not true. I've had a ticket reserved for you since they were first distributed. Front row, right next to Dad." "I know that now," I replied gently. "But that's not what I was told." Another long pause. "She lied to you," he said flatly. "Why would she do that?" It wasn't my place to explain Vanessa's complicated feelings about me, her apparent resentment of my relationship with her son. "I think that's something you need to discuss with your parents," I said instead. "What matters now is that I'm back, and if you still want me at your graduation, nothing could keep me away." "Of course I want you there," he said emphatically. "You're the one who helped me with college applications when Mom and Dad were too busy. You're the one who quizzed me for finals and listened to my practice speeches and believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." His recognition of our bond, so honest and unfiltered, washed over me like a healing balm. Whatever manipulations Vanessa had attempted, she hadn't succeeded in diminishing what Ethan and I meant to each other. "Then I'll be there," I promised. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, considering my options. I could confront Tyler and Vanessa about their deception. I could arrive at the graduation with righteous indignation, making a scene that would embarrass them publicly. I could even expose their lie to Ethan in detail, potentially damaging his relationship with his parents on what should be a joyful day. But none of those approaches felt right. This wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about finally claiming my proper place in Ethan's life, not as the convenient helper relegated to the background when inconvenient, but as the grandmother who had earned her front row seat through years of genuine love and support. The next morning, I dressed with particular care. A new dress in a shade of blue that Claire had insisted brought out my eyes. A delicate silver necklace that had been my mother's. Comfortable but elegant shoes that wouldn't make me wince during the long ceremony. I styled my hair, applied makeup with a steadier hand than usual, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in years, I recognized the woman looking back at me, not just as someone's mother or grandmother, but as Maggie Wilson, a woman in her own right. I arrived at the high school auditorium early, sailing past the ushers with the ticket Ethan had reserved for me. The front row was still mostly empty, though Vanessa and Tyler were already seated, heads bent together in what appeared to be a tense conversation. When Vanessa looked up and saw me approaching, her expression froze in a mixture of shock and dismay. "Maggie," she said, her voice pitched slightly too high. "What a surprise! We thought you were still in Denver." "I got back yesterday," I replied calmly, taking the seat that bore my name, directly beside Tyler, just as Ethan had said. Ethan called to make sure I'd be here. He was quite concerned when no one could tell him where I was. Vanessa's carefully made-up face couldn't quite hide her discomfort. Tyler, at least, had the grace to look ashamed. "Mom, about the ticket situation," he began. "Not now," I interrupted gently but firmly. "Today is about Ethan and his achievement. We can discuss other matters later." Vanessa opened her mouth as if to argue, then closed it again as more family members began arriving. Her parents, her sister and brother-in-law, and finally, a distinguished-looking older man who had to be Tyler's father, given the strong resemblance between them. I hadn't seen Richard Wilson in over 20 years, not since he'd walked out when Tyler was a small child, offering minimal child support and even less emotional presence. Yet here he was, being welcomed warmly by Vanessa, guided to a seat on her other side as if he were a cherished family member rather than a virtual stranger who had contributed nothing to Ethan's upbringing. "Dad, you remember Mom?" Tyler said awkwardly as Richard settled into his seat. Richard gave me a cursory nod, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Margaret, you're looking well." "It's Maggie now," I corrected mildly. "And thank you. 18 years of helping raise your grandson has kept me young." The subtle barb landed precisely as intended. Richard shifted uncomfortably, while Tyler stared fixedly at the stage. Vanessa, ever the social choreographer, quickly redirected the conversation to safer topics: the weather, the impressive decorations, the college plans of various graduates. I let the chatter wash over me, focusing instead on the stage where soon Ethan would receive his diploma. This moment wasn't about old grievances or family politics. It was about celebrating the wonderful young man he had become. Thoughtful, intelligent, kind, despite the complicated dynamics surrounding him. When the graduates filed in, Ethan scanning the crowd until he spotted me, his face lighting up with a smile so genuine it brought tears to my eyes, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision in returning. Not for Tyler or Vanessa, not even for my own vindication, but for this precious bond that no amount of manipulation could sever. The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches and presentations, culminating in the moment when Ethan crossed the stage to receive his diploma. I clapped until my hands hurt, unabashed tears streaming down my face. In that moment, all the years of sacrifice, the canceled plans, the middle-of-the-night phone calls, the endless accommodations to Vanessa's ever-changing preferences, felt worthwhile. Afterward, as families gathered outside for photos, I expected to be sidelined as usual. Instead, Ethan sought me out immediately, hugging me fiercely before anyone else could claim his attention. "You came," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I promised I would," I reminded him, blinking back fresh tears. Vanessa appeared at his elbow, subtly trying to maneuver him toward the professional photographer she'd hired. "Ethan, we need to get the family photos done before everyone disperses." "Great idea," Ethan agreed, keeping his arm firmly around my shoulders. "Grammy first." The look that flashed across Vanessa's face, a mixture of fury and thwarted control, might once have intimidated me into stepping aside. Now, it simply washed over me without effect. I had earned this moment, this recognition, this place of honor in Ethan's graduation celebrations. The photographer positioned us beneath a flowering tree, Ethan's arm still protectively around me, both of us beaming with genuine joy. I knew this photo would become one of my most treasured possessions, not because it conveyed some perfect family narrative like Vanessa's curated social media presence, but because it captured a real connection between two people who truly loved each other. As we moved toward the area Vanessa had designated for the larger family photographs, I overheard her speaking in low, urgent tones to Tyler. "This is completely inappropriate. She wasn't supposed to be here at all, let alone taking over the photo session." She's his grandmother," Tyler replied, his voice uncharacteristically firm. "And clearly Ethan wants her here. Let's not make a scene." Vanessa's nostrils flared slightly, but she composed herself as Ethan approached with the photographer in tow. "Now one with all the grandparents," Ethan directed, gesturing for Eleanor, Richard, and me to join him. I stood on one side of Ethan, Eleanor on the other, with Richard somewhat awkwardly positioned beside her. As the photographer adjusted our positioning, Eleanor leaned slightly toward me. "I didn't know you weren't originally invited," she murmured, barely moving her lips. That wasn't right. Her unexpected solidarity surprised me. We'd never been close, our relationship defined primarily by competition for Vanessa's approval and Ethan's affection. Yet here she was, acknowledging the injustice of my near exclusion. "Thank you for saying that," I whispered back as the photographer called for smiles. The open house that followed was held at Tyler and Vanessa's home, lavishly decorated with Princeton colors and expensive floral arrangements. Typically, I would have arrived early to help set up, stayed late to clean, and spent the intervening hours making sure everyone else enjoyed themselves. Today, I entered as a guest, accepting a glass of champagne from a hired server and circulating among Ethan's teachers and friends. Several of his teachers sought me out specifically, their comments revealing how much Ethan had spoken about me over the years. "Mrs. Wilson, we've heard so much about you from Ethan," his English teacher said warmly. "He credits you with his love of literature. You're the one who helped with that award-winning science project, aren't you?" Another asked, "Ethan mentioned your weekend research trips to the university labs." Each recognition, each acknowledgement of my role in Ethan's education and development felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been dismissed or minimized. I hadn't realized how much I needed that validation until I received it, not from Tyler or Vanessa, but from the people who had witnessed Ethan's growth and achievements. As the evening progressed, I found myself on the patio, taking a moment of quiet away from the celebrating crowd. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over Vanessa's meticulously landscaped garden. In the distance, I could hear laughter and conversation, the joyful sounds of a milestone celebration. "There you are," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Richard Wilson, Tyler's father, holding 2 fresh glasses of champagne. He offered one to me, which I accepted with polite wariness. "Quite a day," he observed, leaning against the patio railing beside me. "Ethan's an impressive young man." "Yes, he is," I agreed, taking a small sip of champagne. "You've done a remarkable job with him," Richard continued, surprising me. "Tyler tells me you've been very involved in his upbringing." I couldn't help the short, incredulous laugh that escaped me. "That's certainly one way to put it. I've been his primary caregiver whenever Tyler and Vanessa were busy, which was most of the time. Sick days, school vacations, weekends, evenings." Richard nodded, looking out over the garden rather than at me. "I owe you an apology, Maggie, not just for today, but for the past 40 years or so." This was so unexpected that I nearly choked on my champagne. "Excuse me?" "I was a terrible husband and an even worse father," he said matter-of-factly. "I left you and Tyler because I wasn't ready for responsibility. I told myself you'd both be better off without me, but the truth is, I was only thinking of myself." I studied his profile, noting the distinguished gray at his temples, the expensive cut of his suit, the confidence that came with decades of professional success. This was the man who had left me to raise our son alone, who had sent irregularly timed child support checks but never birthday presents, who had missed every milestone in Tyler's life until today. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. He sighed, taking a long sip of his champagne before answering. "Seeing Ethan today, this brilliant, confident young man heading to Princeton, made me realize everything I missed with Tyler. And watching you with him, the obvious bond between you." He shook his head. It was a stark reminder of my failures. "Tyler turned out fine," I said, more defensive of our son than I'd expected to feel. "He has a successful career, a beautiful home." "But not a happy marriage," Richard finished quietly. "And a tendency to put work above family that looks painfully familiar to me." I couldn't argue with that assessment. Tyler had indeed followed in his father's footsteps in certain ways, prioritizing career advancement and social status over deeper connections. The difference was that Tyler had stayed physically present in his family's life, even as he remained emotionally distant. "When Vanessa called to invite me to the graduation," Richard continued, "I was surprised, to say the least. Tyler and I have had minimal contact over the years, and I'd never even met Ethan. But she was quite insistent, saying it was important for Ethan to have all his family there." "All his family except me, apparently," I couldn't help noting. Richard grimaced. "Yes, well, I gathered from today's events that there was some miscommunication about your invitation. For what it's worth, I wouldn't have accepted if I'd known it meant excluding you. That was unconscionable." His unexpected alliance, however belated, touched something in me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps a recognition that people could change, could recognize their mistakes even decades later. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "But today isn't about old grievances. It's about celebrating Ethan." Richard nodded, raising his glass slightly. "To Ethan, then, and to you, Maggie, for being the kind of grandparent I should have been." We clinked glasses just as the patio door slid open, revealing Tyler. He paused, clearly surprised to find his estranged father and his mother in what appeared to be a companionable conversation. "Everything okay out here?" he asked, his gaze darting between us. "Just fine," I assured him. "Your father and I were catching up." Tyler's expression suggested he found this scenario highly improbable, but he didn't press further. "Ethan's looking for you," he told me. "He wants to introduce you to his debate team friends before they leave." I excused myself, leaving father and son on the patio. As I crossed the living room toward the cluster of teenagers near the front door, I caught sight of Vanessa observing me from across the room, her expression unreadable. For a moment, our eyes met in silent acknowledgement. Then she turned away, busying herself with replacing an empty appetizer tray. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. The glow of being fully included in Ethan's celebration carrying me through occasional awkward moments with Vanessa's family or Tyler's colleagues. By the time the last guests departed, I was exhausted but deeply content. Ethan found me in the kitchen, where I'd instinctively begun helping the caterers clean up. Old habits die hard after all. "Grammy, you don't have to do that," he chided gently, taking a stack of dirty plates from my hands and setting them aside. "Mom hired people for this." "Force of habit," I admitted with a small smile. "I should probably head home. It's been a long day." "Wait," he said, suddenly serious. "There's something I need to talk to you about first." He led me to the now empty dining room, closing the door to ensure our privacy. We sat at one end of the long table, the remnants of Vanessa's elaborate dessert display still artfully arranged. At the center. "I know what happened," Ethan began without preamble. "About Mom trying to exclude you from the graduation. Dad told me everything after I confronted them last night." I sighed, not wanting to come between Ethan and his parents despite everything. "Sweetheart, No. Please let me finish," he interrupted, his expression unusually grave. "What they did was wrong, cruel even. You've been more present in my life than almost anyone. You've supported me, guided me, loved me unconditionally. The idea that you wouldn't be at my graduation..." He shook his head, clearly still processing the betrayal. "I'm just glad we sorted it out in time," I said gently. "But that's just it," he continued earnestly. "It shouldn't have needed sorting out. You should never have been put in that position to begin with. And it's not the first time, is it? Mom's been pushing you aside for years, treating you like you're only valuable when you're useful to her." His perception startled me. I'd always tried to shield him from the tensions between Vanessa and me, to maintain a peaceful environment, for his sake. Yet, he had seen more than I realized. "You've noticed that?" I asked carefully. "Of course I have," he said with a sad smile. "I've seen how she'll call you at the last minute when they need childcare but exclude you from family. Photos. How you're good enough to cook for parties but not invited to sit at the main table. How she'll correct you in front of me, undermining your authority." Each example was a perfect encapsulation of patterns I'd endured for years, accepting them as the price of remaining in Ethan's life. Hearing him articulate them so clearly was both painful and oddly validating. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I wondered. He looked down, fidgeting with a stray confetti star that had fallen from one of the centerpieces. "I was a kid. I didn't know how to challenge my parents, especially Mom. And I was afraid." "Afraid of what, sweetheart?" "Afraid that if I made waves, they might restrict my time with you even more," he admitted, his voice small. "That Mom would use it as an excuse to keep us apart." How my heart contracted at the thought of Ethan, even as a child, strategically navigating the complex dynamics of our family to protect our relationship. It was a burden he should never have had to bear. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching for his hand across the table. "You shouldn't have had to worry about that." "It's not your fault," he said firmly. "None of this is. And that's why I've made a decision." He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders in a way that made him look suddenly much older than 18. "I'm not going to let them control our relationship anymore. Starting with this summer." "What do you mean?" I asked, curious despite my determination not to come between him and his parents. "Mom and Dad have this elaborate plan for my last summer before college," he explained, rolling his eyes slightly. 2 weeks at this leadership camp Dad's company sponsors, then a month traveling through Europe with Mom to absorb culture before Princeton. The whole thing is scheduled down, to the minute, with barely any time for me to just breathe before college starts. This sounded exactly like something Vanessa would orchestrate. An impressive resume-building summer that would provide perfect material for her social media posts and conversations with her equally competitive friends. That sounds exhausting, I observed mildly. It is, Ethan agreed. And it's not what I want. What I want is to spend at least part of the summer with you. His eyes lit up with sudden enthusiasm. Remember how we used to talk about taking a road trip to the national park someday? You were going to teach me photography, and we'd camp under the stars. The memory warmed me from within. Years ago, when Ethan was around 12 and had just finished reading a book about the national parks, we'd spent hours planning a hypothetical journey that would take us from Yellowstone to the Grand Canyon. At the time, it had seemed like a lovely but impossible dream. Vanessa would never have allowed him to spend that much time away from her influence, and my teaching schedule had restricted my summers as well. I remember, I said softly. But, sweetheart, your parents have already planned your summer, and you're starting Princeton in the fall. I'm 18 now, he reminded me. Legally an adult, and while I respect Mom and Dad, I don't have to follow their schedule for my life anymore. His expression grew more determined. I've decided to skip the leadership camp. It's just a networking thing for Dad anyway, and I've already been accepted to Princeton, so it's not like I need it for my resume. Your mother won't be happy about that, I warned, though I couldn't help the small thrill at the thought of spending more unstructured time with Ethan. Probably not, he conceded, but I'm willing to compromise. I'll still go to Europe with her in August. That's actually something I'm interested in, but July is mine, and I want to spend it with you, if you're willing, that is. The hope in his eyes was impossible to resist. Of course I'm willing, I assured him, but let's make sure this doesn't create more family tension. The last thing I want is to come between you and your parents. This isn't about them, Ethan said firmly. It's about us and the relationship we've built over 18 years. I'm not going to let anyone diminish that anymore, not even my parents. His certainty, his clear-eyed assessment of the situation, filled me with both pride and a bittersweet recognition that he truly was on the cusp of adulthood. This wasn't the impulsive rebellion of a teenager, but the considered decision of a young man recognizing and honoring the relationships that had shaped him. Then let's do it, I said, squeezing his hand. National parks, photography lessons, campfires under the stars, all of it. His face lit up with the same pure joy I'd seen when he was 7, and I'd surprised him with his first telescope, or 12, and we'd stayed up all night to watch a meteor shower from my balcony. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever tensions might arise with Tyler and Vanessa, this connection with Ethan was worth protecting and nurturing. There's just one condition, I added, my tone light but my intention serious. We need to be honest with your parents about our plans. No sneaking around or last-minute announcements. If we're going to assert our right to this relationship, we need to do it openly and respectfully. Ethan nodded, accepting the wisdom of this approach. I'll talk to them tomorrow, he promised. Together, if you're willing to be there? I am, I assured him. We're in this together now. As we rejoined the others in the living room, where Tyler was paying the last of the catering staff and Vanessa was straightening already perfect decorations, I felt a profound shift in my relationship with this family. No longer was I the accommodating grandmother, grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion they deigned to offer. Now I was an equal participant, someone whose bond with Ethan had value and meaning independent of their convenience or preferences. When Tyler offered to drive me home, I accepted graciously, kissing Ethan goodbye with the promise of finalizing our summer plans the following weekend. In the car, Tyler was uncharacteristically quiet, focusing on the road rather than attempting conversation. As we pulled up to my condo building, he finally spoke. Mom, I'm sorry about what happened with the graduation tickets. It was wrong, and I should have stood up to Vanessa about it. Yes, you should have, I agreed calmly. But what matters now is moving forward more honestly. He nodded, his hand still gripping the steering wheel though we were parked. "Ethan told us he wants to spend part of the summer with you instead of attending the leadership program. Vanessa is upset about changing the plans, but..." He hesitated, then continued with unusual firmness. "But I've decided to support his choice. He's an adult now, and he needs to start making his own decisions." The small concession, delivered without drama or guilt-tripping, felt like a significant step toward a healthier family dynamic. "Thank you, Tyler," I said simply. "I think it will be good for him to have some unstructured time before college begins." As I climbed the stairs to my condo, I felt lighter than I had in years. The graduation that Vanessa had tried to exclude me from had instead become a turning point, a reclamation of my rightful place in Ethan's life. More importantly, it had marked a shift in how I viewed myself, no longer just as someone's mother or grandmother, but as Maggie Wilson, a woman with her own needs, boundaries, and value. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and wandered through my living space with new eyes. Tomorrow, I would begin researching national parks for our summer adventure. Perhaps I would even look into photography courses at the community college, reviving a passion I'd set aside decades ago when single motherhood demanded all my resources. For now, though, I was content to sink onto my balcony chair, watching as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. The same stars Ethan and I would soon observe together from canyon rims and mountain meadows, each of us fully present, fully valued, fully free. The graduation ceremony was everything I could have hoped for. Sitting in the front row, watching Ethan cross the stage with confidence and grace, I felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. When his name was called, I stood and applauded, unconcerned with Vanessa's tight smile or the whispers from her family seated behind us. This moment wasn't about them. It was about Ethan and the incredible young man he had become, in part because of my unwavering presence in his life. Afterward, as families gathered for photos, I fully expected to be sidelined as usual. Instead, Ethan broke away from Vanessa's carefully orchestrated photo session to find me. "Grammy, you need to be in these pictures," he said firmly, taking my hand and leading me toward the professional photographer. "I want one with just me and Grammy first," he announced, his arm around my shoulders. The photographer nodded, positioning us beneath a flowering dogwood tree. I could feel Vanessa's eyes burning into my back, but for once, I didn't adjust my behavior to accommodate her disapproval. This was my moment with my grandson, earned through 18 years of genuine love and support. As we posed for several shots, Ethan leaned down and whispered, "Thank you for coming back. It wouldn't have been right without you here." "I wouldn't have missed it for the world," I assured him, blinking back fresh tears. The weeks following graduation unfolded with unexpected developments. True to his word, Ethan had a frank conversation with Tyler and Vanessa about his summer plans. While Vanessa initially resisted the idea of him missing the leadership camp, Tyler surprised everyone by supporting Ethan's decision. "He's an adult now," Tyler told Vanessa during a tense dinner that Ethan later described to me. "He needs to start making his own choices." Perhaps my 3-week absence had affected Tyler more deeply than I realized, forcing him to recognize both my value and his son's independence in a new light. Whatever the reason, by early July, Ethan and I were packing my modest SUV with camping gear, photography equipment, and enough trail mix to sustain us through 2 weeks of national park exploration. Our first stop was Yellowstone, where we spent 3 days hiking to geysers, photographing wildlife, and sitting by campfires under star-strewn skies. I taught Ethan the basics of manual photography: aperture, shutter speed, ISO, watching with delight as he experimented with different techniques to capture the dramatic landscapes. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," he said one evening as we roasted marshmallows beside our tent. "We've been talking about this trip since I was 12. "Sometimes the best dreams take time to realize," I replied, thinking of my own delayed journey toward self-actualization. The important thing is that we didn't give up on it. From Yellowstone, we traveled south to Grand Teton National Park, then east to Badlands, and finally to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, where Claire joined us for the final 3 days. Watching my sister and Ethan bond over shared interests in hiking and photography brought an unexpected dimension of joy to the trip. This was family in its truest sense, people connected by genuine affection and mutual respect rather than obligation, or appearance. Throughout our journey, Ethan shared insights and questions about his upcoming college experience, his hopes for the future, and deeper topics like relationships and values. Freed from Vanessa's controlling influence and Tyler's emotional distance, he seemed to flourish, expressing thoughts and feelings I suspected he'd rarely voiced at home. "I've always felt like I had to meet these impossible standards," he confessed, one night as we sat watching shooting stars from a mountain overlook. "Perfect grades, perfect extracurriculars, perfect college acceptances. Like if I slipped up even once, I'd be letting everyone down." "That's a heavy burden for anyone to carry," I observed gently. He nodded, his face thoughtful in the moonlight. "With you, it's different. I've always known you'd love me regardless of my GPA or which college accepted me. That you value me for who I am, not what I achieve." His perception nearly took my breath away. All these years, I'd worried that my limited financial resources and lack of social connections meant I couldn't provide Ethan with the advantages Vanessa and Tyler could. Yet here he was, identifying the most valuable gift I'd given him: unconditional love and acceptance, something his achievement-oriented parents had perhaps neglected in their focus on external measures of success. "That will never change," I promised him. "No matter where life takes you or what choices you make, that love is constant." When we returned from our trip, bronzed from the sun and laden with memories, I expected to slip back into my usual routine, perhaps with some new boundaries in place, but essentially the same relationship with Tyler and Vanessa. What I didn't anticipate was the dramatic shift that awaited us. Tyler was waiting at my condo when we arrived, pacing the small entryway with an agitation I hadn't seen in him for years. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "Dad? What's wrong?" Ethan asked immediately, dropping his backpack by the door. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, his gaze darting between us. "I need to talk to both of you, actually. It's about Vanessa and me." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Despite their flaws as a couple, Tyler and Vanessa had always presented a united front, their marriage a cornerstone of the carefully constructed image they projected to the world. "Let's sit down," I suggested, leading them to my small living room. "Would anyone like some water or tea?" Tyler shook his head impatiently. "Vanessa and I are separating," he announced without preamble. "I've moved into an apartment downtown." Ethan's eyes widened, but he didn't seem entirely shocked. Perhaps he had sensed the tension in his parents' relationship more acutely than I realized. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Tyler sighed, slumping against the cushions. "It's been coming for a long time, honestly. We've been more business partners than spouses for years. But after what happened with Grammy's exclusion from your graduation," and he glanced at me apologetically, "it forced me to look at some hard truths about our marriage and the kind of family we've created." I remained silent, unsure of my place in this conversation. This was primarily between Tyler and his son, yet I'd been included deliberately, suggesting my role was significant in what had transpired. "I realized I've spent years enabling Vanessa's worst tendencies," Tyler continued. "Her need to control everything, her obsession with appearances, her treatment of people, especially you, Mom, as props or conveniences rather than individuals with feelings and needs." The frank acknowledgement sent a jolt through me. After years of Tyler overlooking or minimizing Vanessa's behavior, This recognition was both validating and slightly destabilizing. Had my departure truly catalyzed such a profound shift in his perspective? "When you left for Denver," he said, turning to me directly, "it was like a spell broke. Suddenly I could see clearly how we'd been treating you, how I'd been complicit, in pushing you to the margins of our family despite everything you've done for us. For Ethan." "Dad, I had no idea you felt this way," Ethan said, his expression a mixture of concern and relief. "Neither did I, until recently," Tyler admitted. "It's like I've been sleepwalking through my own life, following the script Vanessa created without questioning whether it actually made any of us happy." He reached for my hand, an uncharacteristically vulnerable gesture. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything." The apology, delivered without qualification or deflection, melted something in me that had remained frozen despite the progress of recent months. This wasn't just about the graduation incident, but about years of dismissal and disrespect that Tyler had enabled through his silence. "Thank you," I said simply, squeezing his hand before releasing it. "That means a lot to me." "So, what happens now?" Ethan asked, the practical question reflecting his newfound maturity. Tyler straightened his shoulders, looking more decisive than I'd seen him in years. "I've hired a mediator to help us divide assets and formalize the separation. Vanessa isn't thrilled, but she recognizes the marriage has run its course. We're trying to keep things amicable for your sake." "Don't worry about me," Ethan assured him. "I'm just glad you're being honest about the situation." As we talked further, Tyler revealed more details of his awakening. How watching me rebuild my life after years of self-sacrifice had inspired him to question his own choices. How my boundary setting had highlighted the imbalance in their marriage, with Vanessa dictating terms and Tyler acquiescing to maintain peace. "I've spent my whole adult life trying to create this perfect image of success," he confessed. "The right career, the right house, the right schools for Ethan. But underneath it all, I've been deeply unhappy. And I think Vanessa has too, though she'd never admit it." The conversation extended late into the evening, Ethan and I ordering pizza when it became clear Tyler needed to unburden himself fully. As we ate, Tyler mentioned tentative plans to explore interests he'd abandoned years ago. Photography, like me, sailing, even cooking classes. "I don't even know how to make a decent meal for myself," he admitted with a rueful smile. "Always relied on you or Vanessa or restaurants." The image of my successful, polished son fumbling through basic cooking techniques made me laugh, not unkindly, but with genuine affection for his newfound vulnerability. "I could teach you some basics," I offered. "Everyone should know how to feed themselves properly." "I'd like that," he said, his gratitude evident. As Tyler prepared to leave, he hugged Ethan tightly, then turned to me with hesitant arms. I stepped into his embrace without reservation, feeling a connection I feared had been permanently damaged by years of neglect. "Thank you for showing me what courage looks like," he whispered before pulling away. After he left, Ethan helped me clear the pizza boxes, his expression thoughtful. "I didn't see that coming," he admitted, rinsing plates in the sink. "Dad's always gone along with whatever Mom wanted." "People can surprise you," I said, thinking of my own transformation over the past few months. "Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to make us reassess our choices." "Like you going to Denver instead of accepting exclusion from my graduation?" Ethan observed astutely. I nodded, impressed by his perception. Exactly like that. Over the following weeks, I witnessed Tyler's metamorphosis with a mixture of pride and amazement. He began visiting my condo regularly, sometimes for the promised cooking lessons, sometimes just to talk. Our conversations ranged from practical matters like his new apartment to deeper reflections on parenthood, marriage, and personal fulfillment. "I think I modeled my approach to fatherhood on what I thought a successful father should be," he confessed one evening as we chopped vegetables for a simple stir-fry. Provider, disciplinarian, focused on achievement. But I missed the most important parts: emotional presence, unconditional support, genuine connection. It's not too late to change that approach, I assured him. Ethan is just beginning his adult life. You have decades ahead to build the relationship you want with him. Tyler nodded, his knife pausing over a bell pepper. I've been thinking about my own father lately, how his absence shaped me. I was so determined not to abandon Ethan physically that I didn't notice I was becoming emotionally absent instead. The parallel struck me forcefully. Richard Wilson had walked out when Tyler was just 3, leaving a wound that never fully healed despite Tyler's outward success. Tyler had overcorrected by remaining physically present but emotionally distant, creating a different kind of absence in Ethan's life. Awareness is the first step toward change, I said gently. You recognize the pattern. Now you can work on breaking it. As summer progressed, a new family dynamic began to emerge. Ethan split his time between my condo and Tyler's apartment, with occasional obligatory visits to Vanessa, who had retained the family home but seemed increasingly isolated in its perfectly decorated rooms. Mom's not doing well, Ethan confided, after returning from one such visit. She keeps trying to maintain the appearance that everything's perfect, but it's obviously not. She looks exhausted. Despite everything Vanessa had done, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of compassion. Her entire identity had been built around being the perfect wife and mother, the curator of an enviable family life. Without that role, who was she? Your mother has always been very focused on appearances, I said carefully. Sometimes that makes it hard to connect with what truly brings fulfillment. I worry about her being alone, Ethan admitted. Dad at least seems to be discovering new interests, making changes. Mom's just clinging harder to her old life. His empathy, even toward someone who had hurt him through her controlling behavior, touched me deeply. We had raised a compassionate young man, despite the complications of our family dynamics. In early August, with Ethan's European trip with Vanessa approaching, an unexpected visitor arrived at my door one Saturday morning. When I opened it, I found Vanessa standing on my threshold, looking both determined and uncomfortable. "Maggie," she said briskly, "may I come in? There are some things we need to discuss about Ethan's trip." I stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. She moved past me into the living room, her gaze taking in the changes I'd made since reclaiming my space. Colorful throw pillows, framed photographs from our national parks trip, art books stacked on the coffee table. "You've redecorated," she observed neutrally. "I've made the space more reflective of who I am," I corrected gently, offering her a seat. Vanessa perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture rigid with tension. Up close, I could see the toll recent events had taken on her. Fine lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal, a tightness in her shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. "Ethan mentioned you wanted to discuss the trip," I prompted when she remained silent. She nodded, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes. There's been a slight change of plans. My mother has decided to join us for the first week in London and Paris." I waited for the relevance of this information to become clear. "That sounds nice," I said when she didn't elaborate. "I'm sure Eleanor will enjoy spending time with Ethan." "The thing is," Vanessa continued, a hint of her old sharpness returning, "with Mom coming, we've had to adjust our itinerary. Some of the accommodations only have 2 bedrooms and—" "Vanessa," I interrupted gently but firmly, "you don't need my permission to adjust travel plans with your son. He's an adult, and this is your scheduled time with him." She flushed slightly, her composed facade cracking. "That's not— I wasn't." She took a breath, visibly recalibrating. "The truth is, I came here to ask a favor." The request took me completely by surprise. In all the years I'd known Vanessa, she had never directly asked for my help merely expected it as her due. "What kind of favor?" I asked cautiously. "Mom's having some health issues. Nothing serious, but she gets tired easily. I'm worried about managing everything myself. The itinerary, the accommodations, making sure Ethan sees everything important." Her voice trailed off, and for a moment I glimpsed the uncertainty beneath her controlled exterior. "You want me to come along?" I guessed, hardly believing the words as they left my mouth. She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just for the week in Italy. Mom's flying home from Paris, and I thought, well, Ethan mentioned you studied art history in college. The museums in Florence and Rome would be more meaningful with your perspective." I sat back, genuinely stunned by the invitation. After years of being deliberately excluded from family trips and celebrations, being asked to join this one felt almost surreal. "Why now, Vanessa?" I asked directly. "After everything that's happened, why would you want me on this trip?" She was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the framed photograph of Ethan and me at his graduation. When she finally spoke, her voice held an unfamiliar vulnerability. "Because Ethan lights up when he talks about your trip to the national parks. Because Tyler seems happier and more whole since he started spending time with you again. Because..." She swallowed hard. "Because maybe I've been wrong about some things." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Vanessa, this admission represented a significant shift. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas, but found only exhaustion and a tentative openness. "I'll need to think about it," I said finally. "This is unexpected, and I'd want to talk with Ethan before making any decision." She nodded, rising to leave. At the door, she paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "For what it's worth, Maggie, I am sorry about the graduation. That was inexcusable." With that, she was gone, leaving me to process this startling development. When I called Claire later that day to discuss Vanessa's unexpected visit, my sister was predictably skeptical. "It sounds like a trap," she declared flatly. "After years of pushing you aside, suddenly she wants quality time together in Italy? I don't buy it." "I'm not sure what her motivation is," I admitted. But she seemed different, more vulnerable. "Of course she's vulnerable," Claire pointed out. "Her perfect life is crumbling around her. Tyler's left, Ethan's about to leave. For college, and she's realizing she doesn't have any genuine connections to fall back on." There was truth in Claire's assessment. Vanessa had invested everything in creating and maintaining a specific image of family perfection. With that image shattered, perhaps she was finally recognizing the value of authentic relationships, the kind Ethan and I had cultivated despite her interference. "I think I'll talk to Ethan about it," I decided. "See how he feels about having me join them." Ethan's reaction when I broached the subject that evening was immediate and enthusiastic. "That would be amazing, Grammy. I was already dreading spending 2 whole weeks alone with Mom. Having you there for part of it would make it so much better." His excitement was contagious, but I still had reservations. "Are you sure it wouldn't be awkward? Your mother and I haven't exactly had the best relationship. Maybe this is her way of trying to change that," he suggested hopefully. "Dad says she's been doing a lot of thinking since they separated, that she's starting to recognize how controlling she's been." I wasn't entirely convinced that Vanessa had undergone such a profound transformation, but the possibility intrigued me. And the thought of exploring Italian art museums with Ethan, sharing my knowledge and passion for Renaissance paintings and classical sculpture, was undeniably appealing. "I'll consider it," I promised, "but let me sleep on the decision." That night, I found myself scrolling through photos from our national parks adventure. Ethan leaning against a giant sequoia, both of us with ice cream at Old Faithful Inn, sunrise over the Grand Tetons. The joy in these images was palpable, a testament to the genuine connection we'd maintained despite years of Vanessa's subtle undermining. Could a similar connection be possible between the three of us? It seemed unlikely, given our history. And yet, people could change. I had changed, evolving from the accommodating grandmother who accepted whatever scraps of inclusion were offered to a woman with clear boundaries and expectations. Tyler had changed, finding the courage to leave an unhappy marriage and pursue authentic relationships. Perhaps Vanessa, too, was capable of growth. The next morning, I called her with my decision. "I'll come to Italy," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But I have some conditions." "What conditions?" she asked warily. "First, I'll book my own flights and accommodations. I appreciate the invitation, but I want the freedom to set my own schedule if needed." "That's fine," she agreed quickly. "What else?" "Second, this needs to be a genuine attempt at creating a healthier dynamic between us. For Ethan's sake. No passive-aggressive comments, no controlling behaviors, no undermining my relationship with him." A pause then. "I understand." "And finally," I continued, my voice gentle but firm, "I need acknowledgement that my relationship with Ethan is valuable and important, independent of my usefulness to you or Tyler. I'm not coming as the convenient helper or the background grandmother. I'm coming as someone who loves him and has played a significant role in his life." The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, her voice subdued but steady. "I can agree to those terms. And Maggie, thank you for considering this. I know I haven't given you much reason to trust me." The frank admission surprised me. "No, you haven't," I agreed. "But people can change. I'm willing to see if you have." In the weeks leading up to the trip, I busied myself with preparations, researching museums and historical sites, brushing up on my rudimentary Italian, shopping for comfortable walking shoes and lightweight summer clothes. Claire helped me select a new digital camera with features specifically designed for architectural photography, knowing I'd want to capture the ancient buildings and art that had fascinated me since college. "Just promise me you'll keep your guard up," she warned as we packed my new suitcase. "Vanessa has a pattern of pulling you in when it's convenient, then pushing you away when you're no longer useful." "I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago," I reminded her. "I won't let her manipulate me again." The journey began smoothly enough. Ethan and Vanessa completed their week in London and Paris with Eleanor, then met me at the airport in Rome, where we'd spend 3 days before continuing to Florence. Ethan's enthusiastic hug upon my arrival warmed my heart, while Vanessa's greeting was polite, if somewhat reserved. "How was the Paris portion of your trip?" I asked as we navigated the busy terminal. "Educational," Ethan replied with a slight eye roll. "Mom had us on a strict schedule, 3 museums before lunch every day." "It's important to maximize our time," Vanessa defended, though without her usual sharpness. "There's so much to see." "Which is why we need time to actually absorb what we're seeing," Ethan countered. "Not just rush from one tourist spot to the next." I braced myself for Vanessa's typical dismissal of any challenge to her authority, but to my surprise, she merely nodded thoughtfully. "You might be right." I did feel we were moving too quickly through the Louvre. Maybe we can adjust our pace here in Italy. The small concession set the tone for our time in Rome. Vanessa still arrived at breakfast each morning with a carefully planned itinerary, but she was more flexible about adjustments, more receptive to input from both Ethan and me. When I suggested spending a full afternoon in the Vatican museums rather than trying to combine it with other sites, she agreed without argument. "You're the art expert," she acknowledged. "I'll defer to your judgment on this." The 3 of us fell into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings exploring ancient ruins or Renaissance churches, afternoons in museums or simply wandering the narrow streets, evenings enjoying leisurely dinners at outdoor cafes. Ethan soaked up everything with the enthusiasm of youth, asking insightful questions about history and art that I was delighted to answer. More surprising was Vanessa's gradual relaxation into the experience. By our second day in Rome, she had traded her designer outfits for more practical walking clothes, her perfectly coiffed hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She listened attentively to my explanations of artistic techniques or historical contexts, occasionally asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than competitive knowledge-seeking. On our last evening in Rome, as we sat in a small trattoria near the Spanish Steps, Vanessa set down her wine glass with unusual hesitation. "I want to thank you both for bearing with me this week," she said, addressing Ethan and me. "I know I can be intense about planning and schedules." "You don't say?" Ethan teased gently, the affection in his voice softening the critique. Vanessa smiled ruefully. "I'm trying to be better about controlling everything. It's just hard to change. Patterns that have defined my entire adult life." "What made you want to change?" I asked, genuinely curious about her evolution. She considered the question, twirling pasta around her fork absently. "When Tyler left, I was devastated. Not just because my marriage had failed, but because it forced me to face some uncomfortable truths about myself, about how I've treated people, including both of you." Her frankness caught me off guard. This was the most genuine conversation I could remember having with Vanessa in nearly 2 decades of knowing her. "Mom always taught me that appearances were everything," she continued, glancing around as if expecting Eleanor to materialize and scold her for this revelation. "The right clothes, the right schools, the right connections. Success was measured by how envious other people were of your life." "That sounds exhausting," I observed quietly. "It is," she admitted, "and ultimately empty. When Tyler left, all those people who supposedly envied our perfect life suddenly disappeared. No calls, no invitations, no support, just silence." "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in her isolation. She shook her head slightly. "Don't be. It's been clarifying in a painful way. Made me realize I've been chasing all the wrong things and hurting people who actually mattered in the process." Her gaze met mine directly, a vulnerability in her eyes I'd never witnessed before. "Especially you, Maggie. I've been unnecessarily cruel, and I'm truly sorry for that." The apology, delivered without qualification or deflection, felt like the closing of a long open wound. Not a complete healing, that would take more time and evidence of sustained change, but a genuine beginning. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it." Ethan reached across the table, taking one of my hands and one of Vanessa's. "This is all I've ever wanted," he said earnestly. "For the 2 most important women in my life to actually see each other as people, not as competitors." The moment was poignant in its simplicity. 3 people connected not by perfect harmony or erased history, but by a willingness to move forward with greater understanding and respect. As we continued to Florence and then Venice, this new dynamic deepened. Vanessa and I found unexpected common ground in our pride in Ethan, our appreciation for Italian culture, and even our mutual enjoyment of early morning walks before the tourist crowds descended. We weren't friends exactly, but we were building something more authentic than the strained politeness that had characterized our previous interactions. One morning in Venice, as we sat at a small cafe overlooking the Grand Canal, Ethan excused himself to photograph the gondolas, leaving Vanessa and me alone, something that would have created unbearable tension just months earlier. "He has your eye for composition," Vanessa observed, watching him frame a shot of a weathered gondolier against the pastel buildings. "I've been looking at his photographs from your national parks trip. They're really quite good." "He has natural talent," I agreed, "and genuine passion for it." Vanessa stirred her espresso thoughtfully. "I always pushed him toward more practical pursuits: debate, student government, internships that would look good on college applications. But seeing how he lights up when he's taking photographs or discussing art history with you, It makes me wonder if I've been steering him wrong all along. The admission must have cost her considerable pride. It's not about right or wrong, I suggested gently. Different perspectives offer different benefits. Your emphasis on achievement helped get him into Princeton. My encouragement of his creative interests gives him balance and joy. She considered this, then nodded slowly. I never thought of it that way. I always assumed our approaches were in conflict, that if he listened to you about following his passions, he'd somehow be less successful. Success comes in many forms, I reminded her. Academic achievement, career advancement, financial security, those are important, but so are creativity, emotional well-being, and genuine relationships. You know, that's exactly what my therapist keeps telling me, Vanessa said with a small, self-deprecating smile. I started seeing her after Tyler left. She's been helping me recognize how narrowly I've defined success and happiness. The revelation of therapy surprised me, suggesting a depth of self-reflection I hadn't previously associated with Vanessa. That takes courage, I acknowledged. Looking at yourself honestly isn't easy. No, it isn't, she agreed soberly. But necessary, if I don't want to end up alone with nothing but a perfectly decorated house and social media followers who don't actually care about me. As Ethan rejoined us, eager to show the photographs he'd captured, I found myself reflecting on the journey we'd all taken over the past several months. From Vanessa's cruel exclusion before graduation to this companionable breakfast in Venice. From my passive acceptance of mistreatment to my clear assertion of boundaries. From Ethan caught in the middle to Ethan confidently bridging the gap between two very different women who both loved him deeply. None of us were the same people. We'd been at the beginning of the summer. And while our relationships would never be perfect, still carrying the imprints of past hurts and lingering patterns, they had evolved into something more honest, more balanced, and ultimately more sustainable. On our final evening in Venice, as we took a sunset gondola ride through the quiet back canals, Ethan captured a photograph that would later become one of my most treasured possessions. In it, Vanessa and I are seated side by side, the golden light illuminating our profiles, as we gaze at different points along the canal, not looking at each other, but not in opposition either. Simply existing in the same space, each with our own perspective, yet part of the same picture. When we returned home, with Ethan preparing for his departure to Princeton, I found myself at another crossroads. Claire had been managing our fledgling photography business alone during my absence, and several new clients were eager to schedule sessions. Tyler had invited me to dinner at his apartment, wanting to show off the cooking skills he'd been developing. And Vanessa, surprisingly, had asked if I might be willing to help her redecorate parts of her house, to make it reflect more of who I really am, not just who I've been pretending to be. Each invitation represented a different facet of my evolving life: professional, familial, and the tentative new understanding with Vanessa. For the first time in decades, I felt genuinely free to choose how to allocate my time and energy based on my own preferences and boundaries, not on others' expectations or demands. The day before Ethan left for Princeton, he stopped by my condo with a gift: a leather-bound album filled with photographs from our summer adventures, from the national parks to the Italian cities. The final page held the sunset gondola image, beneath which he'd written in his neat handwriting, "To Grammy, who taught me that it's never too late to reclaim your story and live authentically. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. Love, Ethan." As I hugged him goodbye the next morning, watching him stride confidently toward his future, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not because our journey together was ending, far from it, but because the foundation we'd built over 18 years had evolved into something stronger and more balanced than before. No longer was I just the reliable support person, always available at his parents' convenience. Now I was Maggie Wilson, photographer, teacher, friend, and grandmother, claiming each role with intention and joy, never again allowing myself to be defined solely by my usefulness to others. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset and planning my photography schedule for the coming week, my phone chimed with a message from Ethan. Arrived safely at Princeton. Already missing our talks. Video call Sunday at 7? Love you, Grammy. I smiled, typing back. Sunday at 7 works perfectly. Can't wait to hear about your first impressions. Love you too. Setting down the phone, I gazed out at the deepening twilight, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded me for decades. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear. Relationships would still require navigation. Boundaries would need ongoing maintenance, and my own creative journey was just beginning. In earnest. But for perhaps the first time since becoming a grandmother at 48, I was living primarily as myself, rather than as an extension of someone else's needs. The painful text from Vanessa. We think it's better if you don't attend the graduation ceremony had set in motion a transformation I could never have anticipated. What had been intended as exclusion had become liberation. What had felt like rejection had led to reclamation. And the journey that had begun in hurt and anger had culminated in something far more valuable than mere inclusion in a ceremony. It had given me back myself. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, I made a silent promise to that reclaimed self. From now on, I would honor my own needs alongside others, value my own dreams as worthy of pursuit, and approach relationships from a place of mutual respect rather than self-sacrifice. After all, the greatest gift I could give Ethan, and indeed everyone I loved, was the example of a woman who had finally learned to love herself enough to live authentically, regardless of others' expectations or judgments. That, more than any service or sacrifice, was a legacy worth leaving. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.